You hear me? Perfect. All right. Thanks everybody. It's a great turnout. Really excited to see all the faces here. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces, at least from my perspective, but glad we have such a great turnout tonight. My name is Griffin Bowden. I'm the town engineer for the town of Barnstable. We're here tonight to talk about the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project, particularly the north phase, and I'll explain what that means here shortly. A couple of administrative items to kind of start the meeting. Bathrooms can be found right out here down the hall to the right. If you need a bathroom, there's a water bubbler there as well if you need a refreshment. This meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast on local government access at a later date, as well as our website, so just want to make sure that we make folks aware of that. In addition, I apologize, we did have a number of sewer connection handbooks. This turnout exceeded our expectations, which is fantastic, so we did run out. We will be dropping off more here tomorrow or the next day, and we do have more at our office. You can also find it on the website, and we'll show you where you can find it on the website. So we will make additional copies available. I apologize again that we ran out this evening. With that, I'll start with the presentation. Maybe. Come on. It was working. Apologies.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to advance your slides. I'm sorry. Well, if we only have one technical delay, that would be a good thing. All right, you can advance the slide.
Exactly that your computer's frozen.
Is it? Okay. There we go. All right. Hopefully we're past that. All right, so our agenda for this evening, I'm going to do a quick overview of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Just want to make sure everybody's fully informed as to why we're doing the projects, what are the goals, etc. Then we'll get into the project. We'll talk about the history of the project, the phased approach that we're now taking to the project. We'll review the scopes in more detail of the north phase, which again is the part of the project we're talking about this evening. I'll review some of the contract conditions that are going to be relevant and that folks want to be aware of. We'll discuss construction impacts, and then we'll also talk about the proposed pump station sites. In addition, we'll go over our communication and outreach plan, just so we can make everybody aware how to contact us and how we will be contacting you all during the project and the public as a whole to keep folks informed about progress and impacts. And then we'll have a quick overview of the sewer connection process. At the end, we'll take questions. I'll just ask that we wait for questions till the end, that we get through the presentation. We do have 4 members of our staff here as well to help field questions at the end of the project, at the end of the presentation. So certainly we'll have plenty of time to answer questions as we proceed. So what is the CWMP, right? It's an acronym that we throw out, but it's the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. And the way I like to refer to it is as a planning document, which is required by regulatory agencies and identifies the town's wastewater needs and establishes a recommended plan for resolving them. The town of Barnstable CWMP was regulatorily approved in April of 2021, and it's a 30-year plan, and we are currently in year 4 of this 30-year plan. Thank you. And the general problems we're looking to address with the plan, the biggest one is nitrogen and impaired coastal waters, but there are others, right? There are groundwater quality concerns, pond water quality concerns, which is one that we're addressing with this project actually. Flood zone and climate change, promoting targeted economic development, as well as achieving regulatory requirements. That actually worked, Ainsley.
Oh.
So just going back through the nitrogen pollution issue in the town of Barnstable, nitrogen pollution has been documented really in all of southeastern Massachusetts as a problem by the Massachusetts Estuary Project. Barnstable's coastal waters are impaired due to nitrogen, particularly the southern facing embayments. The town must meet the total maximum daily loads, which is basically the nitrogen budget of these coastal embayments. 78% of the controllable nitrogen, so the nitrogen that humans can control, comes from septic systems, as you can see in this pie chart here, which comes from the Cape Cod Commission's 208 plan. So Title V systems are not designed to deal with nitrogen, at least not as currently designed. And currently approved innovative alternative septic systems don't remove enough nitrogen to achieve the total maximum daily loads in Barnstable. Thus, sewers are necessary to achieve the total maximum daily loads, and that is kind of the basis of the town's comprehensive wastewater management plan. What's the cost of inaction? What if we just don't do anything, right? Well, the Federal Clean Water Act compels the community to meet the TMDL. If we do not, there would be further degradation to our water quality, which is obviously bad. Negative impacts to the local economy and property values. The town also risks a court order, lawsuits or other regulatory enforcement, which would put the town in a bad position. There are newly proposed Title V regulations that also come into play here. The town must implement watershed management plans, which effectively is our CWMP, or the new regulations may actually require every property in town to install a new innovative alternative septic system if we do not complete our plan. So it's another reason why proceeding with our plan as designed makes sense. So what is Barnstable's plan? It's three 10-year phases of sewer expansion. Again, we're in year 4 of the first phase. It includes about 190 miles of new sewers in the town. Just under 12,000 properties have been identified to be connected to the sewer. Each phase is not one big project. Each phase will actually have smaller projects within them. The phases are really review periods, effectively to look back and make sure that we're making progress and reviewing if we need to adapt the plan during those intervals. And this project that we're discussing tonight, the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project, particularly the north phase, is the 3rd major sewer expansion project in this program. We have completed 2 major sewer expansion projects to date, one being the Strawberry Hill Road Sewer Expansion Project, and the other being the Route 28 East Sewer Expansion Project. The plan leverages existing infrastructure to the maximum extent possible. We have the benefit of having a treatment plant. We do need to upgrade the treatment plant, but we have that infrastructure in place as a good solid foundation for the system. We do have existing sewers, mostly focused in Hyannis area, but expanding out now into Centerville, Marston's Mills, Cotuit, etc. And portions of Barnstable Village are also sewered. So we're looking to leverage the existing system to the maximum extent possible. We also will be incorporating non-traditional projects such as stormwater enhancements and dredging projects, but we're not relying on them in order to achieve the TMDLs. We're going to monitor them, and if they do remove nitrogen in a significant amount to the point that we may be able to reduce the amount of sewer expansion that's necessary at a later date, we will look to do that working with the regulators at Mass DEP. And the principle of adaptive management is kind of a core principle of the plan. The plan has to be flexible and adaptive. We have to be able to react to changing environments, changing technologies, changing conditions. And as such, we have a 5-year update that's required every 5 years, which will be next year because we are in year 4 right now. So the town council has actually recently initiated an ad hoc committee to start reviewing the current plan and making any recommendations to modifications to the plan, and that will be occurring over the next 12 to 18 months. And we do submit annual updates to the Cape Cod Commission every year, documenting progress and documenting any changes that occurred during that year. Those can be found on our website, and I will give you the website later on. And the plan will achieve the total maximum daily loads, which again are the water quality budgets for our embayments, which means we are predicted to achieve healthy environments upon completion of the program. This is a map. It's probably something that a lot of you may be familiar with, but this is our sewer expansion phasing plan. In red is our phase 1 areas, so those are the properties that will receive sewer in the first 10 years, or the next 6 years at this point, right? In green is phase 2, the second 10 years of the program, and in yellow is phase 3. the third 10 years of the program. And down in the Cotuit area, we have identified projects that we've referred to as stages, but we do not have a time established for those yet. And that is something we anticipate setting a timeline for, probably as part of the upcoming adaptive management plan. And as I alluded to earlier, each phase is broken down into smaller projects. This is what we call our phase 1 implementation map. This shows all the various projects that we will be executing in order to complete phase 1. On the bottom right is kind of a legend which goes over the projects that have been completed or are in process. So in this location here, the pink, that is our Strawberry Hill Road sewer expansion project. That project has been completed. In green is our Route 28 East sewer expansion project. That project has been completed as well. In this light green is the project that we're talking about this evening, which is the Centerville Village sewer expansion north phase. In the dark green is the southern phase of that project, which is not what we're discussing this evening, as it will be executed at a later date. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the project, right? So how did the project develop? A little history. So the project ultimately came to be as a reaction to the proposed offshore wind project, right? So the route initially was identified to sewer the roads that were going to receive duct banks as part of the proposed offshore wind project. It was identified early on that if these projects were to occur, we will need to install the sewers in those roadways, really to deal with technical issues that and construction coordination issues that abound by two large infrastructure projects needing to be constructed in the same corridor, but also to get the benefit out of the paving at the end and not have to rip up a road twice and repave a road twice, right? So ultimately that's where this project started. Due to some delays in the offshore wind project and the need to maximize financing and subsidies associated with financing for this type of project, DPW made a recommendation to the town council to phase the project, which is what we have done at this point. So the phases of the project are shown in the two figures, the north phase being on the left side and the south phase being on the right side. So effectively, everything south of 28 is in the south phase, everything north of 28 is in the north phase. Route 28 from Finney's Lane to Old Stage is in the north phase, and the section of Main Street and Finney's Lane in the Mothers Park area is in the north phase, even though it's south of 28. So the north phase, we're anticipating construction to commence this fall, probably later this fall, but we're in the contracting phase right now. And the south phase is still in development, and we're anticipating construction to commence next fall. So just some stats and some detail on the project, on the north phase of the project. It's about 3.8 miles of new sewers that will be installed as part of the project. I kind of went over the route, but it's from Route 28. It's on Route 28 from Finney's Lane to Old Stage Road, on Finney's Lane / Main Street from Route 28 to Old Stage, so kind of the Mothers Park area. It's Old Stage Road from Route 28 to Chute Flying Hill Road, and then it's Chute Flying Hill Road from Old Stage all the way up to the service road. There are 3 new proposed submersible sewer pump stations as part of the project. They're shown as these yellow squares here. One at 567 Chute Flying Hill Road, one on an easement at a portion of 944 Chute Flying Hill Road, and one on Mothers Park Road. And we'll talk in detail about each of those particular sites in a moment. There are about 220 parcels that are anticipated to be connected to sewer at the completion of this project, which will remove about 5.7 kilograms per day of nitrogen from the Centerville River watershed. For perspective, that's about 15% of the nitrogen we need to remove from the Centerville River sewer watershed in order to achieve the TMDL. And the construction contract award is in process. The contractor has been selected. The low bidder was CC Construction, who actually did the construction of the Strawberry Hill Road sewer expansion project as well. The contract is scheduled to be $20.38 million. So I wanted to provide some conditions just to kind of let you know what to expect with the work, right? So These are conditions that are in the contract that the contractor will have to comply with. The contractor has 870 days, which is roughly 29 months, to complete the construction. Now that doesn't mean construction will be occurring for 29 months in any particular location, but that's for the whole 3.8 miles of the project. We anticipate construction starting sometime before the end of the year and completing sometime in the spring of 2027, sorry. Work hours, our normal working hours will be Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. All the work on Route 28 will be night work and will occur Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Work hours may be modified and extended upon the approval of the DPW director if it's deemed to be necessary. As far as restrictions, we won't be working on town observed holidays, no work from Memorial Day to Labor Day. That said, these restrictions may be modified and waived by the DPW director if it's deemed to be appropriate in order to achieve the goals of the project. And the contractor's traffic management plans must be reviewed and approved by DPW and emergency services such as police and fire, etc. We also coordinate with school buses. We also coordinate with the postal services just to ensure everybody knows, all these services know where construction is occurring, and we can make arrangements to make sure that these services are still available and that work is being done in a safe manner for everybody. So construction impacts, I like to be straightforward. I mean, we've all seen this sewer construction project starting now over the first two projects that have occurred. So these are major infrastructure projects. It does require deep excavations, 10 to 15 feet being the typical depths, with some areas that they're digging holes of 25 feet deep within the roadways. There will be multiple crews we're anticipating, which will be coordinated in multiple different work zones. Trenching within the roadways and the shoulders will occur, which will result in temporary uneven road surfaces that will be paved every Friday, but will not be even will not be perfectly even during construction by any means. Coordinated road closures and detours will be necessary, but again, we will be having those coordination calls every week to make sure that those are all coordinated and done in a safe manner. One thing I want to make sure that we flag is that tree trimming above the roadway will need to occur for the sewer project to be commenced. You see here, very large excavators generally used in order to dig the deep holes, so they have to make sure that there's no obstructions above the road. So they will come in and, working with the town arborist, they will trim trees above the roadway. We generally do not need to go outside the roadway for this type of project, but they will be trimming above the road at the beginning of the work. There will be noise and vibration from the construction activities, and fences and landscaping and stuff that's located within the public right-of-way may need to be relocated. So what does this look like, right? So there's just some quick pictures. We've all seen this, but we'll come in, we'll do some tree trimming in the areas that we've identified that need to be dealt with. Roads will be closed in certain locations as needed, and advisories will be issued. Note on the white sign right in the middle, local traffic will be allowed to go past the road closure, so you will be able to get to your home. And we do try to work with businesses to the extent reasonable and practical to make sure that folks know that the businesses are open. There will be excavation within the roadways, right? So just some examples of some of the excavation that occurred on the Strawberry Hill Road project. And then the roads will be temporarily paved. And then upon completion of the project, the roads will be completely paved curb to curb. We do anticipate that at some point during the project we will need to coordinate with the offshore wind project. As far as the north project goes, the only portion of the project that is in the same corridor as the wind project is Shoe Flying Hill Road. So this slide kind of only applies to Shoe Flying Hill Road for the purposes of this project. The utilities will not be installed at the same time in the same trench. What will happen, and this kind of outlines it, I won't go into explicit detail on it, but effectively what will happen is the sewer will be installed first, and then the wind developer will do what they have to do, and then the roads will be paved. and the paving of the roadway on Shoot Flying Hill Road and in the areas where the wind developer has to do work will be paid for by the wind developer. So sewer pump stations. I like to have this graphic just to make sure everybody understands why we need to have sewer pump stations. So the way the sewer system works is it's effectively, think of it as your plumbing, right? Except outside, a lot larger, and under a roadway. So we try to install pipes that collect wastewater and direct it by gravity to low points. At a certain point, we can't go any further because we've reached the lowest of low points, right? We can't get all the way to the wastewater treatment plant where it ultimately needs to go. So we need to install what's called the pump station in order to overcome gravity. So that pump station will have a series of pumps in it and will be connected to what's called the force main, which is a pipe that's under pressure, and it will pump the wastewater up a hill to the whatever location we're pumping it to in that particular case. On this project, there are 3 proposed that are necessary for this very reason. The first one, again, at more technical difficulties, at 567 Shoot Flying Hill Road, a town-owned parcel. Another one at 944 Shoot Flying Hill Road, which is an easement that the town has acquired, and another one within Mothers Park, what is currently Mothers Park Road. And again, I'll have more detail on those in a couple slides. So what do these pump stations look like? This type of pump station is not, the pump stations we're talking about in this project are not the pump stations you see, for instance, at the intersection of Route 28 and Finney's Lane. That's not what we're talking about here. That was a major pump station that really will serve the whole CWMP. What we're talking about here is what we call a submersible pump station. So it's a below grade vault where the wastewater comes into, and the pumps are located in there, and that's where all the pumping happens. What's above grade is, and this is a good example here, is a generator and a control box. And again, on this slide here, a generator, and you can't really see it in the back, but there's a control box back there. This is actually a picture from today on Strawberry Hill Road of the sewer pump station that was installed as part of that project. The 3 pump stations that are part of this project will be very similar to this one. This one is still undergoing restoration. You'll see that some trees and bushes have been planted to start some screening, and we'll be doing some landscaping, some grass, and we intend to pave the driveway at a later date. So there is some cleanup still to be done there, but that's kind of the flavor of what these stations look like. On the right is actually another one that we installed up in Barnstable Village in a neighborhood, Rendezvous Lane, a number of years back at this point, about 5 years ago. And again, the below grade vaults right here. You have your generator and your electrical equipment, which are actually now hidden behind fences. You can't see them when you go out there. There's a fence, and then there's this rock here which kind of covers a hose connection that we have there so that we can clean out the pump station if we need to. So they can be done differently. I will say with this project, this is the design intent, is something similar to this. So then, operation and maintenance of these pump stations. We do have crews that are required to visit the stations once a day. They're identifiable in a town pickup truck, and they'll basically do a visual inspection every day, log how the equipment's working and make sure everything's functioning properly. That's required in order for permit compliance. The pump stations are monitored remotely, so all of our operators of our wastewater system actually have cell phones that will alert them if something's going wrong at any one of the stations or at the plant or any of our other critical infrastructure. So we know almost immediately if something's going wrong here. Periodic maintenance will occur to service old failing components. That will not happen generally at the early portion of the life of the infrastructure, but as we progress, it is a mechanical piece of infrastructure. Things need to be replaced. The generators will automatically be exercised weekly for about 15 minutes, kind of similar to a generator you would have at your home. You need to exercise them to make sure that they are working properly. Odors and noise, which are usually the biggest question, are generally not an issue for pump stations when they're properly functioning. We don't get a lot of complaints about these. We get a lot of people that are concerned about odors and noise, right? And rightfully so, but that's generally not an issue with this type of infrastructure. And if it is, there's usually something that's going wrong that we need to correct, and it usually gets corrected very quickly. And landscaping will be maintained by town crews. Some So I'll quickly just kind of go over the design of each of the 3 pump stations. Again, at least the first 2 are very similar to the one that I showed you on Chute Flying Hill Road, and then Mothers Park Road has a little bit of a different design to it. So here, this is 567 Chute Flying Hill Road. I'll show you a picture of what the site looks like in a moment. But it's a town-owned property, kind of heading up towards Lake Wequaquet. If we're heading north on Chute Flying Hill Road, it'll be on the left side. And the sewer will come onto the property. Somewhere here, we'll have a paved driveway. And then the sewer pump station will be in this location, and we'll pump out through this pipe here. We'll have a generator and electrical panel in the back, and we'll look to provide some landscape screening in the front upon completion of construction to keep it relatively low profile. We have secured a Conservation Commission approval. There is a wetland in the rear of the property that we were within the resource buffer of, so we had to go through the Conservation Commission process. So that has occurred. And we have had some meetings with some of the direct abutters of this project. This is the property in question. It's fairly overgrown, so it will be cleared. The pump station will be roughly in this area here, so the site will need to be cleared. Some of this invasive species we'll look to try to clean up at the completion of the work. And then 944 Chute Flying Hill Road. This is actually an easement that the town acquired from the property owner, who owns the property at 944 Chute Flying Hill Road. Similar to the other site and similar to the Chute Flying Hill Road project, or the Strawberry Hill project, there'll be a driveway where trucks will come in and maintain the pump station, which will be right in this location, and then through a series of pipes, it'll pump up the hill kind of towards Route 28. There'll be a generator in the rear as well as a control panel. And we'll look to screen the front so that it's kind of screened from the road to the maximum extent possible. One thing I'll note, and you'll see on this sheet, the property owner actually cleared the property before they transferred the easement to us, so we have not started work there, but the property owner was interested in taking the trees down themselves. So you actually can see that the property is somewhat cleared at this moment. So when you're driving north on Chute Flying Hill Road and you're going kind of past the big open space there, you'll see this cleared area on the right. That's the proposed pump station site before you get up to the horse farm, which is actually part of this property. All right, and then we get to Mothers Park. So this figure here shows the ultimate proposal for Mothers Park. There's kind of a lot going on here, so I'll walk through every piece of it. But ultimately, the proposed pump station will be up in this location here. So just for reference, up off the page would be Route 28, kind of down and off the sheet to the bottom would be like Main Street, Centerville, and then Long Pond would be over to the right side of this. This is Finney's Lane. This is North Main Street and Main Street heading south, and this is that cut-through road, Mothers Park Road. So as part of the proposal, we're proposing to eliminate Mothers Park Road and put the sewer pump station right in this location here. So we'll leave a small driveway to access that. That will just be accessed by town staff. It won't be a through road, but the pump station would go in this location. And then the remainder of Mothers Park Road would be physically removed and regraded and planted with grass, and then eventually will become part of the park and will be able to be utilized for park purposes. Other improvements we're looking to make here, and really were necessary in order to do that, is to realign the intersection at the intersection of Main Street and North Main Street and Finney's Lane. Due to the acute angle of the current intersection, that's really why this cut through of Mothers Park existed, was so that people looking to go north were able to do so without having to take a right-hand turn at the intersection. So the intersection will be realigned so that it's a properly aligned intersection, and that will be able to accommodate right turns heading north as well as left turns coming from the north and heading to the east. Additionally, as part of the proposal, we're proposing to install a sidewalk along North Main Street, kind of along the southern end of Mothers Park, a crosswalk on Finney's Lane and a crosswalk on North Main Street, as well as a parking area, so folks can park and enjoy the site. Yes, sir.
Which one of those roads is Finney's Lane? I can't see. Can you point out again?
Yeah, Finney's Lane is up here. So this is Finney's Lane, and then when you get right to this intersection here, it transitions to Main Street. Thank you. So there'll be a new parking area here, which will have an ADA compliant parking space as well, which we're compelled to do when we make these types of improvements, so that everybody will be able to enjoy the park. Ultimately, the park gets larger in size under this proposal, and actually there'll be kind of this second open space area on the south side of the road, which will be a big green space that'll be able to kind of, we'll figure out down the line what's done with that location, but it'll be some additional open space that will be generated as a result of this proposal.
Were saying that water fountain in the Mother's Park?
Yes.
Works occasionally?
Yes. Yeah. So just some pictures of Mother's Park. I'm sure most people here are familiar with it, but I just want to give some perspective. So the star, this is looking south, kind of at the intersection where Finney's Lane merges to Mother's Park Road. The star is roughly where the pump station will be located upon completion. And again, the pavement on the other side of the pump station will be removed, and this will just be left as a driveway and signed as such. This is the current state of the intersection at Main Street and Finney's Lane, which will get realigned. The new intersection will be kind of in this location here in order to make it a more proper intersection that will have better sight lines and be more safe for people to utilize. And then this is the existing parking area, so to speak, which will be enhanced, and a new sidewalk will be installed, kind of where this guardrail is right now, with a crosswalk that crosses the street. So I wanted to touch briefly on kind of our communication plan so that we can make sure that folks are aware of how we plan to communicate and engage folks with this project. Our one-stop shop for communications relative to everything we're doing water resource-wise in town is barnstable.waterresources.com. The website has been routinely updated and has all the available information you will need to have the latest and greatest information as to what's going on with the project. There are more resources there as well. You can find our comprehensive wastewater management plan there if you want to read thousands of pages of reports. There's also information on sewer connections and looking forward as to where we're planning to head with projects. There also is information on water quality monitoring. So for instance, our cyanobacteria reporting, there are links on there in order to get to the reporting and stuff like that for that. So we have kind of 3 stages of communication for each project. We have a pre-construction communications. So when we're about to start a construction project, we will mail out sewer connection forms to every resident who's anticipated to receive sewer. Those have been mailed out for this project, and I'm sure a number of you have received them. Actually, by a show of hands, how many people here are here as a result of those mailings? Okay, great. Good, so it was effective. We're happy to see that. And then there will be construction updates along the way, which will go out through the various ways we get information out to the public. Barnstable Water Resources will continue to be updated. Each project has its own project narrative and update. So any news on the project, you can go there at any time to find that. And then we hold public meetings, like for instance, this public meeting is being recorded and will be on the website, so you can go back and watch me talk to you again if you'd like to. So during active construction, we kind of have 4 buckets as to how we deal with communication outreach. We have one bucket which we kind of call the traditional communication methods, which are media releases, making sure media releases are getting on the radio and newspaper, physical mailings to residents, as well as signage in the area of the work. We also have digital communication methods, such as Barnstable Water Resources, social media, so trying to leverage all the available digital ways to reach folks. We do a significant amount of in-person outreach. We do brief town council often on the projects. We do attend neighborhood association meetings when invited and provide updates at those forums. We hold meetings such as these, and we have a kind of recurring public workshop that we actually host here that we discuss topics of the day relative to the CWMP and help folks with questions that they have. We also have some customized tools such as the Barnstable Government Access advertisements, the Discover Barnstable podcast, and some other kind of newer tools that we're utilizing to try to reach more people with this information. So this is just some examples of what those look like. And then post-construction, our goal is to proactively communicate that the project has been completed and then help assist folks through the sewer connection process. So we will send, when the project is completed, you will receive a notice from the Department of Public Works first that says, hi, you, it's us, we've completed the project. You will now, this is now what you can expect to hear from the community. So you will be receiving letters from the finance department, you'll be receiving letters from the Board of Health. And we'll try to outline the roadmap to the extent possible to try to just make it as clear as possible. And we're always here to answer questions. We also have a homeowner sewer connection guide, as a number of you got tonight, but I wish we brought more copies, and again, we will provide more copies. That's always on the website as well that you can find, but the homeowners connection guide is kind of a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about connecting the sewer. And then there's additional support tools that we utilize, such as the workshop that I was talking about that we host here, attendance of neighborhood association meetings, and the like. Just some pictures of what those look like. Again, the homeowners connection guide, we will be bringing more copies here to this building either tomorrow or the next day. And we have boxes of them at our office, so if you're interested in getting a hard copy, you can always stop by the DPW administration office at 382 Falmouth Road, at the intersection of Falmouth Road and Versus Way, kind of across from Bobby Burns. And you can pick one up at our office. So just quickly wanted to walk through the sewer connection process again on this project. We're 29 months away from that, but just wanted to make sure that we at least addressed it, and we will continue to do so. So there's really a kind of a 6-step process. First, you get your notice that you're required to hook up to the sewer. You then go through a process of hiring a licensed sewer installer to connect you to sewer. The sewer connection happens. We then inspect the sewer connection, and we have personnel present, personnel from the DPW present throughout the connection process to make sure it's being installed per the specifications of the community. Your septic system will need to be abandoned. And there are a couple ways to do that. Most notably, people generally fill them in place, but they can also be removed if that suits your property better. And then once you've been connected and the connection's been signed off on, you'll go into the system as being connected to sewer, and you will receive a sewer service bill at the same recurrence as your water bill. And it will be based on your water bill. So what are the costs, right? There generally are 3 costs for connecting to sewer. The first one is the sewer assessment. In July of 2021, the town council voted to cap the sewer assessment at $10,000 per sewer unit. So every equivalent dwelling unit, which is defined here, but effectively if you're a single family resident, you're 1 unit, and you would be capped at $10,000. In some projects, you may be less than $10,000, and some, certainly the costs of some projects will exceed $10,000, but the assessment will be capped for residents at $10,000 per dwelling unit. The second cost is the sewer connection, so what I was just talking about. The property owner needs to hire a licensed sewer installer. The cost will vary by property, so depending upon how far away from the road your house is, whether you have a driveway that you need to put your connection through or not, whether there's some landscaping you need to disturb or replace, whether you need to go around the house or connect in the front. So every property is a little different, so that cost will vary. And for that reason, we encourage folks to get some multiple quotes. Certainly not required to do so, but we encourage that in order to make sure that you're getting fair and proper pricing. Costs can be financed through the Barnstable County Cape Cod Aqua Fund. They currently have 0 to 2% rate loans available for new sewer connections, and 4% rate loans available for condominium and apartment communities. There's also a state tax credit that's available for full-time primary residents. So once you've connected and gone through that process, make sure you read up on that and take advantage of your tax credit. And then the third charge will be the utility billing. So once you are connected to sewer, you will be billed on the same frequency as your water bill. So there are multiple districts in town that actually bill at different occurrences. But your bill will be based on how much water you use effectively. And the approximate cost per single family residence average in the community is about $420 a year. All right, so just gonna go through some project contacts here, and I'll ask some of my staff to come up just so you can see their faces because they're the project team. Again, I'm Griffin Bowden. I'm the town engineer for the town of Barnstable. Tyler is doing the walk here, and Ansley, come on up. So Ansley is our sewer connection program manager. So once we get through the construction process and we get to the connections, Ansley will be the one that will be helping you through that process. Tyler Gilman is our project manager who will be managing the sewer construction aspect. And Christopher Gadd is our new communications assistant. He is assisting our communications manager with communicating with the community, this project, and really everything we do at the Department of Public Works. Our communication manager is currently on maternity leave through the end of the year. So Chris will be the point of contact for this project for the foreseeable future. Any other inquiries and public comments, you can always email the water resources at town.barnstable.ma.us. That comes into, I think, the three of us. So we get, as well as the communication staff downtown. So that comes into a lot of people. So if you are going to try to make contact with us and you can't get somebody directly, you can always email that, that email address, and we would prefer you do so for public comment purposes. And you'll be able to get a response very quickly. You can always call the DPW administration line, 508-790-6400. If you have financial questions, I will encourage you to contact the treasurer's office at 508-862-4054, just because we don't answer those questions beyond really what we just went over, because it's not our area of expertise. You will be able to review project materials in this presentation at Barnstable Water Resources website. barnstablewaterresources.com. There's also a link right on the homepage in order to access that website. So with that, I'll take some questions. You're welcome to sit down if you'd like to. Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
A couple questions.
Yes.
I can't say.
Is the town going to make us replace the entire line? If our septic line already runs towards the road, am I going to have to go all the way back to my house, or can I pick up where it makes sense?
No, well, assuming the septic line is in good condition, PVC, and meets the specs, generally speaking, people would intercept it right before it enters the septic system, and then go and connect from there. So not necessarily.
Yeah. And then two questions on the Shoepline Hill construction.
Sure.
How far apart will the utility work be from the sewer work? Is it a month behind, or is it a year behind?
Yeah, good question, to be determined.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet. We are having coordination calls with the wind developer, but there are not definitive timelines at this point.
Okay.
So we'll be looking to complete the sewer work and then have them kind of come in, so we're not conflicting in the corridor. But that could be a month, it could be months, it could be a year. I don't know at this point.
And on Shoepline Hill specifically, the sidewalk ends right past my house. The town has already funded studies for the rail trail bike path to come up to the service road.
Yep.
It would make a lot of sense to put the sidewalk in now while we're doing all this to get up there. Shoepline Hill is getting absurd with how fast people drive down it. Speed tables should be put in. You know, I hear cars late at night probably going 90 miles an hour up Shoepline Hill.
Yeah, so appreciate the input on that. The current project just includes sewer construction. We will be submitting capital requests for consideration as part of the upcoming capital budget for pedestrian enhancements along this route as well as the southern route, and in order to allow that process to kind of dictate where we're going to spend the money to do that. So we have identified a lot of this route, frankly, as needing pedestrian enhancements. It's not in the budget of the CWMP right now, so we need to review, you know, the budget and address priorities as they come. So it'll be reviewed as part of our capital planning process, and this will be one location that we submit.
Poke the bear on that. Is that
Yeah,
counselor or-
so certainly you can submit comments to us here, that's completely appropriate. You can also talk to your town councilor if you'd like, but certainly you can email us and let us know that it's a high priority to you, and we always ensure that we keep a record of that.
The boat ramp should also be addressed too. There's almost an accident
Yep,
every single day.
yep,
It's bad.
yep,
It's really bad.
yep. Agree. Thank you. Yes, miss.
You're talking about the major lines for the sewers. But what about the roads that lead off of that?
Yep.
Because I'm off of Finney's and still in phase one,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm concerned about when that's gonna happen.
Yep, so, I'm gonna go back to this map here, right? So we installed the main lines on Finney's Lane already, right? We will be coming back and doing all the neighborhoods off of Finney's Lane in a project that we're anticipating will start construction about a year and a half from now.
A year and a half, okay.
Yeah,
And one other quick question. My septic system is in the back of the house. Okay, so they're gonna have to come in the side of the house and around into the backyard. Do they always have to literally dig up your yard to get that line in? Or can it be done underground?
short answer, yes, there will need to be some digging. It doesn't have to be the whole yard, they're gonna dig a trench. But there will have to be excavation on the property in order to connect.
So whatever you have there now won't be there for long. If you have shrubs or gardens
along the route that you need to connect to, and you'll work with your contractor to identify the best connection point for you. One of the other things we do as part of the questionnaire we send out, and we encourage everybody who gets a questionnaire to respond to it just for that reason, is we ask you if you have a preference as to where we leave your connection point. That's the purpose of those questionnaires. So that if you have landscaping that you really want to avoid when you do the connection, we can try to leave your connection point on the other side. Or if, for instance, you're maybe planning on an addition on one side of your house, and it makes way more sense for us to be on the other side. Or maybe you want to replace your driveway, right? Anyway, so you want it to be in the driveway. We don't know all those conditions, we just kind of put a line on paper where we think it makes sense, but we want to get feedback from the residents through that questionnaire process. We also will proactively try to get it if we haven't got that feedback, so we will be coming and knocking on doors before construction starts, before we put your connection point in, to make sure that we, to the extent possible, can get feedback so that we can avoid that issue to the extent possible.
Can I just ask one
Yes.
question too? The options for what happens to your current septic system.
Yeah,
You said you can fill it in
Yeah.
or take it out.
correct.
If you fill it in, what are the I'm not sure how that happens, but what are the chances that over time it collapses the road, the land above it?
It could happen, but you basically fill it in with either stone or concrete to kind of create a stable area there, and it's a relatively common way to do it. Over time, that could certainly occur. You could have a small sinkhole develop if it's not done properly as well. But the abandonment process is managed through the health department and will be inspected by the health department as well. Yes, ma'am.
So a couple of questions. One to the gentleman in the front about the speeders, and you said contact you?
Yes.
Who's contact us? Who is us?
It is bad.
Because it's really, really bad.
Yep. So you can contact me. You can contact really anybody on this slide. You can send inquiries we would prefer to have public comment come into waterresources@townofbarnstable.ma.us. But you can always contact me. My cards are in the rear on the table back there, as well as Tyler's and Ansley's and Chris's. So you can contact anybody in the department.
So I did contact the town, is it the council, whoever does our area, our
Okay.
district.
Yep,
But I figured it doesn't hurt to contact you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the more the merrier.
absolutely.
Okay, and my other questions have to do with the sidewalks, the curbs, the driveways, those areas that are on town property.
Yep.
How does that work in terms of well, maybe you aren't even gonna be digging those up because you're going down the middle of the road.
Yeah, so we We do not plan to replace them in kind. There will probably be trenching across portions of them, because we need to leave a stub to your property. So where those are done, we will kind of cut it back and make sure there's a proper repair made there. However, if at a later date there is funding for enhancements to sidewalks, we would look to kind of deal with it
So
as
it
part of
just
that.
would
So
get like a rough,
it would get a final, what we call a final patch. So it would be a smooth patch, but it would be a patch.
so now what about the wind project that is obviously not on the schedule that you thought it was gonna be? Does that mean that the road is gonna just be a rough pave, and then they'll come back and tear it up again and rough pave it, and then it will be final pave?
Yes, but our goal is to narrow the window that was asked about to the maximum extent possible, right? So that will ultimately be our goal, is to sequence the work as closely as possible so that the temporary paving is there for as little time as possible. However, we have a minimum of 90 days where we have temporary paving on the road because we want it to settle.
Right.
So you'll see it settling, but we want it to, because we want that to occur before we do the final paving, because we don't want a brand new finally paved road to settle.
Right.
Yeah. All right, I'm just gonna go from front to back because I think it's gonna be easier for me. Yes, sir.
Sir, I wonder whether you plan to give priority to the streets that are very close to Lake Waquaca? Because this year was very bad with the cyanobacteria.
Yep.
There was some, I've been coming here for 30 years and never seen it so bad. So is there any plan to give priority to that?
Excuse me, if
Yes,
people
sir.
could stand up, and we can't hear anything.
Okay, all right.
They could stand up or.
I can repeat the question. So the question was, are we going to give priority to properties that are on Lake Waquaca as part of this program? The answer is yes. Let me go back to the map quickly. All right, so the area in green again is the project we're talking about. That actually will be a significant enhancement to the lake already because it's up gradient of the lake, so groundwater is traveling in this area from kind of northwest to southeast. So the parcels we're going to serve along Shoe Flying Hill Road, we think will already make and it will enhance the lake already. However, there are parcels closer to the lake, kind of these brown areas that are on the west side, that will be in a subsequent project, a phase 1 project 2 to 3 years out. There are parcels on the east side of the lake that will be served. They're in a project that's about 1.5 years from starting. And then there's the Huckins Neck area is in kind of the later half of phase 1. And that's really just because we need to be able to build progressively the pipes out, right? We'd love to be doing everywhere all at once, but we do have to actually build the system out in order to be able to do those things. So there is a plan to do that, and it is being prioritized. Yes, sir.
There's a certain number of properties that don't have the ability to gravity feed into the system. I call this lowlanders. So could you address the grinder system or the...
Yeah. So I don't have the number of properties on this project handy as that we think will not be able to connect by gravity, but there will be some. To your point, kind of the low-lying roads. So roads that are generally below the house, or I'm sorry, houses that are generally below the road. Generally speaking, we usually assume they're going to need grinder pumps because their wastewater will need to flow by gravity or be overcome by gravity by pumps to get to the road. The current policy that was established really with the Stewart's Creek project was that the town would purchase the first grinder pump for the property owner, give it to the contractor, and then the contractor would install it and the property owner would own it. So that's the current policy that's in place. I will say that is one policy that we anticipate that the ad hoc committee that's reviewing the adaptive management plan will take up and make a recommendation for the council. That's the current policy, is that at least to date, we've planned on purchasing the first grinder pump for anybody that will need one, and then it will kind of be your property at that point.
Will there be an attempt to kind of a community pump-up station in the area? Or each individual house going to have...
Yeah, so when we get into neighborhoods, our goal will be, if possible, to site smaller, what we'll call municipal pump stations, so community pump stations that we'll maintain to minimize the amount of grinder pumps. That's not gonna be possible everywhere, because there's a lot of homes that drop off kind of significantly from the road, and in those cases, they certainly will need to connect, utilizing a pressurized system. So there's a balance there, and we're looking to minimize grinder pumps, because they are a bit of a nuisance, but we can't avoid them with this type of program. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions. When I'm looking at your map, I'm just trying to figure out where our neighborhood would
Sure.
fall. Estates, which is on Pond Street.
Yep,
I can't tell by your color.
so Pond
scheme.
Street's down here.
No, Pond Street is up.
I'm sorry, right
off
here.
of
Yep,
Phillips.
yep, right here.
Right, yes.
Yep.
So it's kind of, I can't tell your color scheme there where we were at in terms of.
Come see us at the end, we'll pull up your property. And this goes for anybody. We have some laptops here so we can pull up each property if people are interested in what project they're in, and stuff like that. So come see us at the end.
A couple other questions. One, when you talked about the Mother's Park area,
Yep.
and so you're taking away part of the road, and then you're fixing the corner because it's very sharp there in the proximity to where the pump station's going in. Was there any consideration when you did the big pump project at the end of Finney's on Main Street, fixing that intersection, which is far more dangerous, the sharp left turn onto 28?
Certainly on our radar.
I mean, that's way
It's
more-
something that we would have to do in collaboration with Mass DOT, because Route 28 is a state highway, and that type of effort would have to be undertaken in collaboration with DOT.
That's really
So,
scary.
It's something that is absolutely on our radar, and we're advocating for enhancements to, but we work with the state on those types of projects.
Okay, and just one quick last question. So, so our commitment financially is going directly from our property to the street?
That's correct.
Is that it? And then you connect from the street to our property?
That's correct. So we'll leave what we call a stub, so a pipe to your property line, which will be a little bit beyond the street. It'll be to the edge of the public right of way. So you won't have to dig the street up. In fact, we don't want you to do that. So it'll be left at the right of way, so that you'll make a connection at what'll basically be somewhere in your front yard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the map showing the lake, what about sewering is at the east side, Lakeview Drive, and the white part up
Yep.
there?
So I'll go back one more slide. That area is within this plan. It's in phase 2 of the plan, and that really was just because of our projected timeline in order to build the infrastructure up to there. So that's the anticipated timeline at this point. Again, that is, all the timelines are reevaluated constantly and will be as part of the adaptive management plan, so that could potentially change, but there are limitations to how quickly we can get there.
Is it just a couple of other questions? Is there reason to hope that with the sewer going in, that the cyanobacteria will be less of a problem?
So we would assume so, but we don't know. However, we have a study underway that is going to identify the nutrient inputs into the pond. So we're currently, last year, the town council funded a management plan development for Lake Woquacket. It's in development right now. The School for Marine and Science Technologies at UMass Dartmouth is undertaking that study, which includes rigorous sampling of the pond and understanding all the nutrient inputs into the pond. And they're gonna tell us, well, the problem is X. And we anticipate it'll probably be sewer, but we don't know that definitively yet. However, we proactively planned to address it that
Are
way.
they the ones just recently off the town beach diving and taking samples?
I don't know for sure, but I would assume so, because they do take core samples as part of the project,
And one other question. As a property owner, when we contact a contractor, will they hire an engineer? Do they provide the engineering service? And do they get in touch with DigSafe? Or are we responsible for being in touch with DigSafe and then get an engineer and then thirdly get a contractor? How does that all come together?
Yeah, so there's a lot there, but I'll I'll try to address them all. So the first part of your question is, we don't require single-family residential properties to hire an engineer to do the connection. We recommend it, but we don't require it because we understand both the time commitment as well as the financial commitment to do so. And frankly, a lot of homes it's not necessary. It's usually fairly straightforward that the combination of a contractor and our inspector can kind of work out what the plan's going to be. So we don't require an engineer to be hired, though we do recommend it. For multifamily properties and condos, we do require engineering because they're usually more complicated. So that's the first response. I'm sorry, what was the second half of the question?
Well, I have one of those low-lander
Yeah.
properties that's
Yeah.
25 feet below the
Yeah.
level of the street or something like that.
Sure.
It's going to be complicated, it's going to be difficult. I presume I would be better served by having an engineer figure it out. If that's not true, that would be helpful to know.
So we would have to look at the details of your particular property. However, I will say the grinder pump stations that we will be purchasing and requiring people to utilize, there's not a lot of engineering that goes into it. They're kind of one size fits all for residential properties unless there's some unique circumstance, right? So you really kind of just have to find a location to install that. And then they'll run a pipe to it and a pipe from it and make electrical connections. So while certainly we will not tell people to not engage an engineer, it may not be necessary. It may not be as complicated as you think it is. Yes?
It's a two-part question. The Aqua Fund program, it's available to homeowners. Is it available to businesses? Because I think you mentioned the condos and apartments at a different rate, but is the Aqua Fund program available to businesses?
I don't believe it is. I believe it's just residences and condos.
All right, so just to repeat the question for everybody here. The question was, is the Aqua Fund available for businesses? We're not 100% sure, but we believe it's only for residential properties and units.
So my second part of the question is on Main Street, we have 10 businesses. Some are in antique homes like
Yep.
Fernbrook, the museum. Is there a different rate with the Aqua Fund if it's available to the church, to the library, to the museum? Are there different, is that available to them? Or are they considered a business, or like the David Kelly House is an antique home, but what if he sells as a private residence? Like,
Yeah, it's a very good question. We'll have to ask that question to the Aqua Fund and I can get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Around Lake Quokka and other areas, they're private roads.
Yep.
Is the town going to pay for running the sewerage down those roads?
Yes.
So, public or private road, the town will run the pipeline and the same hookup?
Yeah, so kind of outside the scope of the project we're talking about tonight, but certainly on both sides of the Quokka, there are a lot of private roads, right? We've already started undertaking the process of taking by eminent domain easements over private roads in order to allow us to install the sewer, because we need rights to be in there and the community can take those rights. So we have done that. We are not, at least not to date, taking the roadways for roadway purposes. We are basically taking the rights to install a sewer and any utilities we need to, and then the road will be repaved or replaced in the condition that the residences want upon completion of the project. So we recognize that there are private roads and we do need to get rights in order to install the sewers there, but we will be. Yes?
Is there a timeline yet for where the construction is going to start and how it's going to proceed?
We do not have that yet. We will be getting a detailed schedule from our contractor after the contract has been signed. It has not been signed yet. So within the next month, we should have a better idea as to the sequence. We kind of have a good idea as to what's going to happen, but I don't want to speculate. So we will make that available on the project website once we can. Yes?
The question is, if you started with Finney's and now you're going to go to Shoot Flying Hill, why aren't you hooking up people off of that first before you go to the next phase?
So, it's a fair question. The reason why is back to kind of the history of the project, right? So the project was ultimately developed in order to be able to partner with the wind project. in order to get the infrastructure in the road, specifically Shoe Flying Hill Road, but also the points south that the wind project is proposed along. In advance of that, to avoid technical issues and in order to take advantage of the paving that the wind developer will have to do. So that's why we're focused on these roads right now, is to get the infrastructure in the ground before that effort starts.
But wouldn't it make sense to start doing the Finney's area to see how it works out, to see how much more you're gonna have to build to go to the treatment plant?
We will be. So we're going to be starting that construction in a year and a half. What I will say is, we're not going to know the results of the sewer connections for years, because the water that goes into the ground from your septic system takes years to sometimes decades to reach the embayments. So this is a long-term project. We won't immediately see the results. We'll see the results over the course of the program. So we wouldn't just install sewers in an area, stop and wait to see what happens, because we'd potentially be waiting like a decade to see what happened.
No, not to wait, but before you go on to the next section.
Yeah, and so we ultimately have to, in order to achieve the goals of this project, do 2 to 3 projects a year moving forward.
Okay.
So it's not like we're just doing one project and that's all we're doing. We're gonna have 3 projects active within the next year and a half in various portions of the area. So
potentially, no one's gonna actually have to pay for anything until at least 2027.
on this project, that is the case.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, sir.
A quick question, you mentioned about the homeowner will have to hire their own installer.
Yeah.
Okay, for example, I live on Turn Lane. We have about 12.5 homes. That means we could have 12.5 contractors?
Yes or maybe no. I mean, you certainly could work with your neighbors to try to work out a deal with a contractor to take advantage of economies of scale, right? But we wouldn't get involved in that.
Will some be recommended by the DPW?
We have an approved sewer installer list on the Barnstable Water Resources website. It's a long list, but they're not recommended, but they've been screened, right? So they're approved. Yes.
Do you have plans to build like houses around the pump station, or are they gonna look like Strawberry Hill Road?
Not on this project. It'll be like Strawberry Hill Road.
That electrical cabinet is pretty big.
It is.
And they close to the road too.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep. And they will be slightly, the electrical panels are going to be smaller on this project, though not completely smaller. They're not going to go away. And they'll be screened kind of similar to what we're doing now at Strawberry Hill Road.
If you have the VFDs in it, they're gonna be huge.
Correct. Yes.
I just have the question that I didn't want to ask,
Okay.
ask anyway. Suppose you have the original septic system in place at this time. And the worst thing happens, it fails. And you're not anywhere near ready to hook up into the system. What are your options?
All right, so I don't want to speak for our health department or our board of health, but the health department is working with residents in that case, right? So if you are predicted to have sewer within a handful of years and that happens to you, they are working to kind of limp along septic systems or make the most minor repair that's necessary in order to try to avoid people having to fully replace them. In some cases that may be unavoidable, but they are working with residents to not just blanket say, you have to replace your septic system. So they will work with you.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
I know one of my neighbors spent a lot of money, like about 4 years ago, putting in this very sophisticated septic system. Is he out of luck?
So there is the Board of Health has passed a policy whereby there are options for, in certain circumstances, for waivers or extensions. I can't recall offhand if that would be one of them, but there is a policy that's posted on their website where certain circumstances will be considered. The short answer is they will need to replace the system at some point. Whether that'll be the 6 months or they'll get an extension to do that longer, I can't speak for the board. Yes.
Can you explain to the audience how the roadway holds a sewer pipe, gas, electric, and now a cable duct bank? Where do they all live in relation to one another?
Show us the road.
Sure. So
Here's
we'll
the
just
road.
use this road as an example, right? Because I don't have a copy of a plan. But effectively what's gonna happen is on the roads where the duck bank are proposed, the sewer will be installed on one side of the road, generally speaking in one of the lanes, right? The duck bank will be installed on another side of the road, generally the opposite side of the road. The gas generally is already in one of the shoulders, as well as the electric is already in one of the shoulders. And then the water will either be existing within a shoulder or maybe replaced within a shoulder. But that's generally kind of the corridor and how we view the corridor along those projects. So kind of gas, sewer, duck bank, water, kind of maybe flopped on each side, but generally speaking, everybody has their own corridor. We're really rebuilding the utility corridor in order to complete the work. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
Just a quick question. What is the town's right of way onto people's property?
Yeah, it varies depending upon the road. For instance, Route 28 is 100 feet wide. Most of the roads in town are 40 to 50. Some can be as small as 20, 30, some can be 60. So they vary, it really depends upon the road. Some vary, some literally aren't a consistent width. So I can't speak for every section of the roadways on this project, but they vary. But there is always some distance from the edge of pavement that is owned by the town. Yes, Bob?
Perfect. A question for you. Kind of going back to the beginning of the presentation. You mentioned the CWMP essentially was our watershed permit or whatever. I know under the Massachusetts DEP, there were regulations that required the TMDLs to be reduced within 20 years. Our CWMP is a 30-year project. I know the town had to apply to get a watershed permit. What is the status of that, and what are the consequences of not getting that permit, if it hasn't already been granted?
So we have an application into the DEP. We were the first community to submit an application. We submitted it over a year ago. DEP has recognized that the application is complete. They have submitted some preliminary minor comments on the application, and we're working towards addressing those comments, so we expect that we'll have the watershed permit in place hopefully in the coming months, subject to their review timeline. So I don't anticipate the negative side of that occurring. We've had productive conversations with DEP. There has been, at least to date, no balking at the 30-year timeline. So we don't anticipate that to change. We've had productive conversations to date.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yes.
Next question. During the Cape Cod Commission approval for Park City Wind, one of the board members said he would like to see the telephone poles underground down Main Street. Is that part of the proposal, or are you leaving the poles intact?
Well, first, that's not the project we're discussing tonight,
Okay.
and so we haven't designed that project completely yet. But the short answer is that's not currently in the plans.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question on the $10,000.
Yeah.
What does that do?
It'll be due upon your ability to connect. So once we have completed the project is functional, and you've received a notice of an estimated assessment from the finance department, you would be due to pay that, and you can set up. It doesn't have to be paid $10,000. You can be set up on a financing timeline through the treasurer's office up to 30 years. But it would be basically once you're able to connect. So roughly with this project, spring, summer 2027.
27. Okay, and just a couple other quick questions. So we gave the contractor, say, $20,000 to connect us. And then how do we get that into that 30-year payment situation?
The current available financing options are the Aqua Fund.
Oh, just that?
Yes.
So we would pay for everything and then they would reimburse us?
You would receive a loan through them. So they would pay, I believe they pay the contractor directly, right? Yeah, they would pay the contractor directly once it's completed, and you would just have a loan set up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back.
First, thanks for being here, and thanks for taking my question. After the 29 months that it takes to set up, is there a time limit that you have to connect? How long, how much time do you have?
The current policy of the Board of Health is 6 months.
6 months, and for people who do not, what kind of penalty are they looking at?
So there's a policy by which you can potentially get extensions under certain circumstances, and there are fines that can be levied if it's not done.
That's my exact question. What kind of fines and levies would you put on someone who didn't understand and didn't do it? What are we looking at?
So I don't know exactly what the fine would be, and that certainly would not be our first path. That would be for, somebody who was blatantly disregarding outreach. But I don't know off the top of my head what the fine could potentially be. That's not something we would be looking to do.
Okay, so it's gonna be so it's 29 months and then 6 months after that you have to connect, and then it's a $10,000 cap to connect. Does that include the construction?
No.
Or just the connection?
It's $10,000 for the betterment. It's effectively a $10,000 betterment. Think of it that way. It's for bettering the property to have the ability to connect. It's offsetting the cost of the capital expense of the project, at least a portion of it. So that's a payment to the town for the capital expense to install the sewers in the road. The connection from your house to the road is an additional cost.
I'm sorry, so it's $10,000 just to be able to connect?
Correct.
And then any construction that happens on the landowner's property is an additional to that?
Correct.
And they have 6 months to take care of it, or they might be fined, and everyone in this one phase has to do it within those 6 months?
So we have the ability to fine. I don't anticipate we're going to get to that point unless it's blatant disregard, but
When you have the ability to fine, who backs that? I mean, how does that work? Is that from the state level, or is that from
the jurisdiction under Mass General Law for ordering connections is with the Board of Health.
Board of Health?
Correct.
Okay,
So they've set the policy.
Mass, so it's the state.
It's the town. Under state law, it's the town's Board of Health, which is not, it's a
And then you
public
had
law.
mentioned, at the very beginning, you had mentioned something, IA, about if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Back to Title V, septics that everyone went through. What was that? 'Cause that was, so if this doesn't happen, the project fails, or you were saying that, is that imposed by the federal or the state level if this IA?
Yeah, it's a state law, that towns are compelled to, towns within nitrogen sensitive areas, which we are required to receive a watershed permit and advance the implementation of their watershed permit on the timeline that they've proposed in their plan, right? If they don't, the backup plan, so to speak, would be to require innovative alternative septic systems to be installed on every property within the nitrogen sensitive areas. We don't expect to have to do that, back to Bob's question that he just had. If the watershed permit is approved and we proceed with implementation of it, there would not be a need to do that because our plan would preclude the need to do that. But absent a watershed plan and absent implementation of the watershed plan, every parcel in town may potentially need to have an innovative alternative septic system under state law.
Where's the processing? Are they still going to use the same processing plant that's in Hyannis, that
Yes.
small area for 28?
Yes. Yes.
Everything's going to go there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Is that, because it's 3 years from now, is that 10,000 gonna change?
So the ordinance does have a clause in it whereby the town council can vote to increase the costs, basically consistent with inflation. They also can vote to change the number, but that's not anticipated at this time. But there is a clause within the ordinance that they could increase the number consistent with inflation if they so choose.
So it could be more than 10.
Possibly, right now it's 10. Yeah. Yes.
Griffin, quick question regarding the experience you've seen with the Strawberry Hill project and what you're forecasting here regarding the performance of the contractor in relation to any damage or any kind of claims that homeowners may have to make in relation to the projects overall.
Yeah, certainly. So one benefit we have here is we have the same contractor, right? So that could be viewed as a pro, as a con. I would view that as a pro. I think CC Construction did a very good job on the first project. and I think they're a reputable company, they're a local company, and they're looking to, you know, establish a good relationship with the community, right? Claims will certainly occur through construction. There's really not ways to avoid that if they're effectively accidents, right? So there are processes to deal with those. Generally speaking, the contractor based on the contract that we have with them, is responsible for any damage that they make to private property. That generally does have to go through an insurance process though, so it can be a little arduous.
And just kind of as a follow-up, so it's specific to, say, for the historic homes, when you mentioned vibration and sound, a lot of the historic homes are built on stone foundations, and so how do we, as homeowners, prepare, because I don't necessarily know if there was a assessment in the built environment. I know there's a lot of assessments done in relation to the natural environment, but I don't think there was much done in the built environment. So how do we protect ourselves and communicate up front our concerns and manage that process with that contractor? Because I understand the town is not responsible.
Yeah, so certainly we will be on top of ensuring that vibrations in the areas you're talking about are minimized to the extent possible. They can't be zero, just due to the nature of the work. We do anticipate working with the wind developer specifically in the historic area to set up monitoring. They're actually compelled to do so under their permits. So we're working with establishing the potential monitoring plan if that construction is coordinated, whereby hopefully they may actually even pay for it, but I won't commit them to something. Yes,
Do you have any idea how many trees in Centerville were taken down in the historic district?
We're still working on the design of that project, so I do not have that answer tonight, and that's why I wanted to be clear that we weren't talking about that area, because we will have further updates on that project at a later date. Yes?
There are historic homes that are involved in this project.
There absolutely are, yes. There absolutely are, yes. Yep, and we will be ensuring that there are appropriate measures taken to minimize potential damage, absolutely. Yes?
On the big picture slide.
Big picture slide. This one? This one?
Yeah, there's a big swath of the town of Barnstable up there northwest.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that pretty little bay on the north.
Yep.
And I don't see any colors there.
Yep. So Barnstable Harbor is the north side, right? It does not currently require nitrogen remediation in order to maintain a healthy ecosystem. It currently has a healthy ecosystem, at least from a nitrogen perspective, right? There are areas of the plan, really around Millway, where there were recommendations to install some sewers in order to minimize some issues that we see there. But generally speaking, the Great Marshes is viewed as healthy and it doesn't need the nitrogen mitigation. This area here, effectively the plan when it comes to a nitrogen calculation, it's a big calculation, right? It's really source interdiction. We're trying to remove the source of nitrogen entering the environment. And it's a big math problem. Where do you need to remove and how much do you need to remove in order to have a healthy environment? When we got to the end of the design and planning of the program, we didn't need to do this area in order to meet the TMDLs. So this was the area that was really left out for that purpose. These were the areas we needed to focus on in order to achieve the total maximum daily loads.
Interesting.
Any additional questions? Counselor?
I just want to say the north side has a 9.5-foot tide. So that Barnstable Harbor flushes into Cape Cod Bay much more easily than Prince Cove North Bay. So it's geographically it's got an advantage that way. But you also can't see, but the whole courthouse area is already sewer.
That's right. Actually, it's a little hard to see here, but this area in gray, which you probably can't see in the back, represents existing sewer systems. So kind of the downtown Barnstable Village area near the courthouse, up near Millway, is already sewered. Any more questions? Yes.
The houses that are actually lower than the sewer that would require a grinder,
Yeah.
would they also require a generator in case their power went out?
So current policy, they will not require one.
Okay.
They may choose to install one.
It's beneficial?
You know, there is storage within the pump station, the grinder pump station, very minimal amount. so that you can still flush your toilets and stuff during power outages, and you won't have a backup, but you probably don't want to run your laundry, and frankly you can't because the power's out anyway, and you probably don't want to take a bath, right? But you'll just have to kind of mitigate your water usage, but you may want to install a generator in order to have that luxury. Yes?
Is there some sort of a rule of thumb for how often you need to have a grinder pump, how many feet? I mean, is one typically sufficient, or how do you calculate that? And if someone has to have two, does the town pay for the second one or the homeowner?
I wouldn't anticipate anybody will need a second.
Okay.
It would have to be a very, very long run, and I don't think we have any property in town that will be that case. I'll probably eat those words at some point, but I don't anticipate that will be the case. Certainly not along this route.
If you do have to have a grinder pump, is there additional electrical costs that the homeowner would be obligated to pay to hook the grinder pump up as well?
Yeah. I mean, you would have to connect the grinder pump to your panel and to your electrical system, so there will be electrical costs associated with that. You know, some people may need a new sub panel. Unfortunately, it really depends upon your situation, but there will be a cost associated with electrical connections. Yes.
And are those pumps above grade or below grade?
So they're in the ground. Yeah, they're in the ground. They have different types. The ones that we spec would be in the ground with kind of a cover at grade that you can hide if you'd like to. They do have ones that can go in people's basements, actually. Those aren't the ones we're specifying, but we could opt to go that way at a later date. Yes, Councilor.
Just to clarify the betterment fee, the $10,000, that's a maximum.
Correct.
I think along Finney's Lane, people are getting those now for $6,300.
Yeah, it's less than 10,000 along Finney's Lane.
It depends on what it costs to put it right down the street.
It depends upon the total capital cost and the amount of people that will ultimately utilize the infrastructure. So it's,
Originally, when they designed the program and financially set up how it's going to work, the betterment fee was going to be $17,000.
that was the original proposal, and actually the capital cost of the program far exceeds that. It's like $75,000 per parcel, so it's probably higher than that now, but when we had done the initial calculations, that was roughly what it was. So the town is already using other financial ways to subsidize the cost. Some communities do it as a 50-50 betterment, some communities do it as 100%. It's all recovered by the property owner, and it could be a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 betterment, and the community chose not to do that. Any other questions? All right, well, thank everybody. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Why are excavations so deep?
So ultimately, we have to make sure the pipes, the question was why the excavation is so deep. Ultimately, we have to make sure the pipes are able to flow by gravity, and they need to have a certain slope to them. And we try to minimize the amount of pump stations we have, so in order to do that, we ultimately end up being deep in order to go basically against hills at a certain point. So it just comes down to the design of the system. Thanks everybody for attending, great turnout, appreciate it.